Good evening, everyone. We are going to go ahead and get started. Tonight is the Parks and Recreation Committee meeting, Wednesday, October 24th, 2018. I am Chairwoman Tanika Hill. I've called this meeting for Parks and Recreation Committee meeting for today. To be held here in City Council chambers. We do have an agenda, but before we get started here, I just want to welcome everyone, thank everyone for coming out. I'm excited to see all the many faces. That means we got some really hot topics on the agenda tonight that has a little more interest than maybe one may have thought. So thank you all for joining us. And now I will call the roll of the members, committee members. Councilman Jaros. Here. Councilwoman Cavanis.
Here.
Councilwoman McIntosh.
Here.
Councilman Moore. I make a motion to excuse Councilman Moore. I did get notification that he could not be here. Moved by Councilman Jaros and seconded by Councilwoman Cavanis. It is not. Oh, and Councilwoman Hill here. Thank you. And I also would like to welcome our wonderful Madam President, Council President Charlene Mancuso, and also Councilman John Wotilla. Thank you so much for joining us tonight as well. And again, yes. And then I welcome you all as well. And before we introduce our esteemed panel of guests here, I would like, if you are able, to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. I also would like to welcome and acknowledge those that are here from the administration as well. Allison Lucasy Love, who is our Community Projects Manager. I also see Director of Recreation, Mr. Max Stevens, who's also in the audience here. And then we do have some special guests for our agenda, our first agenda item. So just if you don't have the agenda, there are some there, but just to go over, the first item we will be discussing tonight is the Euclid Aquatic System Planning Study. That is going to be a presentation by Nancy Nozick. I said it wrong anyway. Nancy Nozick of Brandsetter Carroll Incorporated, and then also joining her is Lawrence Brandsetter as well, so welcome. Also, our second item on the agenda will be Ordinance 228-1988, which was an emergency ordinance amending Section 947.04 of the Streets, Utilities, and Public Services Code and Codified Ordinance of the City of Euclid relative to dogs in public places. And then last but not least, we will also have a discussion that talks about community gardens and how we as a city can move forward to support these gardens, if there should be some resolution in place that addresses them, and again, you know, what do we want it to look like? It seems that urban gardening is becoming more popular nowadays, and with all that's going on with food and health, I think it is also kind of important that we learn how to be a little bit more self-sustainable. So we will have a nice discussion on that as well. I will try to have us all out of here by 8 p.m. But with saying that, I'm going to go ahead and move to the first agenda item, and I will turn it over to Ms. Lucasy Love.
Thank you, Councilperson Hill. So, Council, I'd just like to give you a little bit of a refresher and background for our audience of what we have in front of us here on agenda item number 1. So, when we adopted the master plan earlier this year, one of the components in the plan was to undergo a facility study. So that would be a study of all public physical assets that the municipality has ownership over. That's a long list of buildings, parks, and other public spaces. And so we went through as an administration and looked at the different themes that we could pull out, and also looked at wants versus needs It became very clear over the summer that an immediate need was looking at the conditions of our pools. So we have the main pool at Memorial, we have a number of neighborhood pools, and unfortunately, one of our neighborhood pools, Glenbrook, we were not able to open for summer 2018, and other maintenance needs that are ongoing and will continue to be needs moving into 2019 for that season caused us to decide that undergoing an aquatics facility study was really at the top of that priority list in terms of the many facilities that the municipality does own. So earlier this year, we asked council to authorize the Department of Planning and Development to enter into an RFP process. We received back 3 very well qualified responses to those RFPs. We had a committee go through and really rank the documents, and we thank Councilman Wotilla for serving on that ad hoc committee. And Branstetter Carroll emerged as the most qualified because of their work in Northeast Ohio and their extensive work with aquatics programs. So we're thrilled that they are able to be here tonight. As Councilwoman Hill said, we have Larry Branstetter, who's the owner of the company, one of the owners, as well as Nancy Nozick, who's going to go through a presentation about exactly what their proposal would allow the city to vision for an aquatics program here at the city that's very different than what we have today. So we're very excited to bring this to you at the committee, and then depending on the reaction, how the conversation goes, we'd love to present this to you at a upcoming council meeting and ask to move forward with Branstetter Carroll as a consultant on the facility study. You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, there we are. I knew it would work. Thank you for inviting us here tonight. Again, I am Nancy Nozick. That's Larry Branstetter from Branstetter Carroll Architects. Our firm has been in business for 38 years. We opened a Cleveland office about 27 years ago. We're located right downtown Cleveland in the Warehouse District. Our primary focus as a firm are projects for units of local government. So we work for cities, towns, counties in the regional area. And in doing so, we are very much in the public realm, and we do a lot of public work, and so we understand the needs of local government and cities such as yourselves in terms of not just the facilities you need and the programs you run, but the bottom line of operating costs and budgets and things like that. So our approach to the aquatics system feasibility study is really a holistic approach to not just what you need, but what you could have, how you would pay for it, how you would be able to operate it and look at your bottom line. So I'm going to go through, we submitted our qualifications. I'm not going to get into that too much. We want to go through what we propose to do as part of this process. I will add that we have, because we do so much of this work, we've designed over 125 outdoor aquatic facilities for municipalities and communities. About half of those have been renovation work as opposed to new. And because of all of that work, we have aquatic engineering personnel on our staff. So we do all of that work in-house, and that's one of the benefits we have. So let's go to the first slide. I pushed the arrow button to the next. Oh, who did I put in charge of changing our slides? There we go, there we go. So we want to briefly go through our services, and there's kind of 4 steps to it. The first step is really what we call a needs analysis and demographic review. We want to understand what you have, how it's working, what isn't working, and what you may need in the future. So that includes both an assessment of the physical pools and the splash park that you have now. We look at the current operating costs, the current revenue, and how many users are coming to each of the pools. We'll look at the past however many years, whatever data you have available for that, and kind of study that. In conjunction with that, we look at the demographics of the city. We have developed over the years a series of metrics that we use that are based also on some national metrics from the National Park and Rec Association, and identifying based on the population how many people you should serve in your aquatic facilities. We'll look not only at the city of Euclid, we can also look at a radius surrounding, a 5-minute drive, a 10-minute drive, 3 miles out, 5 miles out, to see how many people may encompass the use of your facilities. And we apply some metrics to that to understand, how many people you could serve both in a day as well as a whole season of pool usage. We will compare that to your community and look at, could the community support 4 pools? Can it support 2 pools? Can it support 1 pool? So that's part of this study, is to understand all of that. So we kind of put together a forecast of attendance that starts to lead us to what facilities do you need to support that attendance. In addition, in the scope, we've included 3 case studies of similar facilities in the area. So we will look at communities similar to yours, both in size and in median income and similar proximity, and look at what they have done as a case study, both before they got a new pool and after they got a new pool. And then we'll look at some alternative, as I said, some strategies to how to meet these needs. Let's go to the next. Critical to this is what we call citizen engagement. No plan that the city comes up with will be successful if the citizens aren't engaged and in support and in agreement of what should happen in the future. So we will develop what we call a citizen engagement plan. We've put some options here. What we will do if we're working on the project is we'll refine this more once we get started. But these are some of the things that we have done and can do that includes public open houses and input sessions, online surveys that we can also do. We do a variety of survey formats, but how do we reach the most people? We can identify key stakeholder groups and meet with them individually. The goal is to get as much input as possible that will inform whatever recommendations would come out of the study. Then we take that information and we start to prepare what we call a building program and design concepts. So we look at how many people do we think you could be serving in the aquatics program, and how are we going to accomplish that? And what does that mean in terms of, what we have here? How much water surface area should you have? How much deck and grass area should you have surrounding the pools? What kind of features does the community want to have in the pool areas? So we go through and kind of create a list of those things in a program that leads us to how much space it should take, how big it should be, which eventually leads to cost. So we will look through a variety of alternative concepts. There's never just one concept. There's always multiple concepts. So we go through a whole series, and they develop as we work through the process to find what is appropriate for the community. And then finally, I think this is the last one. As I mentioned, one of the key pieces is cost and budget, operating budget. So because of our experience with so many pools, we keep track, we touch base with pools, not only the ones that we've built, but the ones that we know that we didn't build in various communities. We touch base with them and say, can you provide us with your operating cost from last year and your revenue from last year, and how many people came to the pool? And they're more than willing to share that with us. So we keep track of that. so that we can gauge and make sure that our recommendations are keeping up with the times and on par. And then we can identify what your estimated operating expense will be for the pool. That includes the chemicals to keep the pool clean, it includes lifeguards, it includes concession supplies, all of those kind of things. And then we'll look at revenues. That includes user fees, what you pay to come to the pool, as well as concession sales and swim lessons and rentals and all that kind of thing. So we come up kind of with a operating pro forma, if you will, that has a expenses and revenues budget. In our experience, seasonal outdoor municipal pools can break even, and that's the goal. We're not looking to have you have something that's going to make a whole lot of money, but we don't want to drain the budget. So we're looking to come up with something that is balanced, and then develop to that. So we're not building too much that's going to cost too much to operate and you won't recoup those expenses. We want it to be a balanced approach. Then we will also look at what is proposed to meet those needs, how much it costs to build at. And then we also have ways to discuss different forms of funding to help you move forward and make it a successful project for that to actually build it as well. So that's kind of what we have here written down, financial strategy for implementation. So that's both the operating budget as well as the capital expenditures. So that pulls the whole kind of process of the study together. We also wanted to share with you some images, fun things, to show what other pools in the area have and what some unique features are that we could investigate for the city of Euclid. So here are a series of photos for activity pools. Similar to what you have over at Memorial Pool, you have a large play structure over there. But the idea of an activity pool that has a zero entry, and again, many of your neighborhood pools have the zero entry, even though it's just a simple L-shaped pool, but where you can walk into the water and then have a lot of activities to do while you're in the water. And there's a whole variety of splashy and slidey and interactive things that can be done in that part of the pool, in that kind of zero depth to about a foot and a half of water depth. There's also a component of lap lanes. We will work with your community to find out, do we have swim teams? How many swim teams? If not, there's still a need for lap swimming, lap lanes. Everybody wants to have some lap lanes available. So we'll determine from you what the need is here in terms of lap lanes for competitive swimming. Often associated with the lap lanes is also some deep water for diving boards or other fun features that we'll show you that need deep water. Lazy rivers are very fun. This is a very popular feature in outdoor pools. There is a current that runs through the lazy river, so you can get on the raft and just float, or you can walk against the current for exercise. We have a lot of pools that, again, to utilize the majority of the day, you may have swimming lessons going on in one area of the lap pool, and then in the lazy river you can have a group of seniors that are walking against the current for exercise. So there's a lot of potential there, and they're just a whole lot of fun too. Slides. You have a large slide right now at Memorial Pool. There's a variety of slides that can be done, including, I don't know if you can see here, the green one in the top photo and the red one in the bottom photo is called a family slide. It's a lot shallower, but it's very wide, and you can have multiple people go down it. So an adult and a child can go down together. It makes it kind of fun. There are some other unique features. In the upper left is a fairly new product. This is a standard product now from one of the water feature companies. And it's kind of this dome that you climb up on top of and slide down, and it's just another way to interact in the water. On the bottom, there are the lily pads. You may have seen those in other communities where you walk across the lily pads. And in the right, there are climbing walls now that extend up and lean over into the pool, so you can go up the climbing wall and fall into the pool. So just a lot of fun features. Splash pads. Indian Hills has a splash pad right now. There have been a lot of developments in splash pad features and elements that really cater to a variety of age groups. And this is a great alternative for, you don't need to have a lifeguard, there's no standing water. And splash pads can have a longer season of use. You can start them up earlier in the spring if we have some warm days, and you can keep it operating later in the fall, again, if it's warm. And it's more kind of a self-guided activity. A couple other features, pool house. The pool should have a pool house with locker and restroom facilities, the equipment rooms for what goes in to operate the pool, concessions areas. Oftentimes we will put a party room in the pool house to assist parties that might happen and rentals that might happen at the pool. So there's a variety of things we can do with the pool house. Talked about concessions. Concessions is important. Concessions is an important part of revenue for the pools. If you want families to come and stay there for a while, it's great to have some concession offerings for them. That's it? That's the last slide? That's the last one. So we wanted to share some of those ideas with you and share our process with you, and we welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you, Nancy. Colleagues, do you have any questions?
When do we start?
Wherever you'd like.
I will mention the one thing I didn't address in our proposal. We put a schedule together. The schedule for the planning process, we put in about 4 months. Sometimes it takes a little longer, depending on how much public engagement we're going to do, and we want to make sure we have ample time for that. But we also have all of these stages that we went through tend to overlap. So we don't do one thing and then stop and then move on to the next thing. A lot of these things are happening concurrently as we move through the process, but I think we proposed about a 4-month schedule in the proposal.
Okay. And I do want to ask, have you already taken a look at our pools yet, or that will be if we decide to go ahead and...
We have taken a cursory look, just kind of toured around. I personally went around to all of the pool facilities that you have, just to see where they're located and get a feel for where they are and what you have, just to understand in terms of putting the proposal together. When we do the project, we will delve in deep and understand what's working, what's not working, what's the history of maintenance, and how is it being used, and we'll delve much deeper. But we have taken a look at all of them just from a cursory review.
Okay, wonderful. Councilwoman Cavanis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To Nancy, if you don't mind me, I don't want to slaughter your last name.
That's fine.
I apologize.
Nancy works.
The Indian Hill Splash Park is in the ward that I represent, and I've always wondered, because it was actually built before I came on board, and I always wondered if it could be enlarged or if other things can be added to it, along with the concern with the flooring, and that would be something that you would look at and give us advice on for a splash park.
From my visit over there, it looked like it was a pool that was infilled and then became a splash park.
Yes.
So we will look at, I'm trying to remember the manufacturer. I think I even looked up the manufacturer of those features. If we can add to that. The trick there is it's all underground piping that goes back to the pump house. So if we're going to add things, we're going to be cutting up that deck, which might be a good thing because then we can get a better deck surface there. But we definitely look at the options of can we expand it and enhance it, what are the potential there, and what's the condition of the features that are out there today.
Okay, because I always wonder if we had a little bit more of an improvement in that area, that whether or not we would attract more people there and a larger age group maybe as well. Expanded out.
And from being there, I think there is some space to expand, so you may even keep what you have and just add on another little section. There's lots of things we can look at.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the last time I had one of these mics in my hand, I was at a karaoke, I think, and I'll spare you. you're over on the other side of the highway, right? And part of citizen engagement will be going over to those neighborhoods or any other neighborhoods that you might want to talk to some people, and that be part of that citizen engagement strategy. And I believe the name of the game really is to ask people what they would like. And when we go into neighborhoods on recreation planning, we always ask, what do you like about your existing system? What don't you like? And what do you want to see changed? And that's all you really have to ask. And I'm sure you've got some stakeholders over there that are people that use it regularly, and you probably have it in your other wards. You have stakeholders that have an aquatic interest, and we would want to talk with them, maybe 1-hour meetings we could arrange here at the city building or in an evening, and say, you know, what would you like to see us do? Because what we're attempting to do here is to build consensus around the solution to a problem. And if I could add a couple other key points. One is outdoor recreational aquatics is the number 2 participatory sport in the country. If you separate walking from running, then outdoor recreational aquatics is number 1. You know, there's a reason that Bay Village gets 60,000 people a summer. And there's a reason that Rocky River gets 40,000, or Avon Lake gets 60,000. And so that's because you offer a good facility, a good experience, you get the numbers there, then you can recover your operating costs. We will compare what you're spending now and how much value you're getting to what a reconfigured aquatic system could be here in Euclid. So that's really what we're talking about. How do we address the unmet needs here in the city? And every city's faced this when you're right at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Bradstetter. Any other questions? Oh, I'm sorry, we have a follow-up question.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. It just came to mind that if we do say yes to this, what would the timeline be in establishing all of this? And
Our schedule has us starting mid to end of November and going about 4 months to go through this process. As I said, that can be flexible. When we're working with cities, we want to make sure that we spend enough time to get the consensus and get people on board and hear from everybody we need to hear from. So if we need to push it a little bit to make sure we're hearing from enough of the community members and getting enough outreach, you know, we're flexible to do that. But our price is not contingent on timeline. It takes what it takes. But we've proposed about 4 months.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman McIntosh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to, I may have misheard the number of facilities that you've done thus far. I heard it as 125.
That is correct.
It is correct?
Yes.
Can you describe where throughout the region?
All throughout, oh, hi, he's going to answer that.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Bradstetter.
Well, just on the east side of Cleveland, we have South Euclid, Lyndhurst, Wycliffe, Willoughby, Beechwood, and Mayfield Village. That's it. Over on the other side, Bay Village, Westlake, Avon Lake, North Ridgeville, Elyria. Elyria is a series of splash pads. And if you go a little bit south, Talmadge, down near Akron is a recent project. And I would say, you know, in the last 30 years, we've probably done at least 60 or 70% of the municipal pools in the state of Ohio, and as well as Kentucky and about 15 other states. We've really had good success here in northeastern Ohio. The projects have done well. They've met our expectations in terms of attendance, operating revenues, and it's been a great experience watching this transform. Same thing sort of has been happening with recreation centers here in Northeast Ohio. And we've been part of that too at Seven Hills, and I'm trying to think of some others off the top of my head. But anyway, it's here, again, the same idea of recovering expenses. And we talk about recovering operating expenses. We feel very passionate about that no child gets turned away. And we are going to have, we would recommend user fees, but that's essentially a council decision when the time comes. But we want to provide good recreation service, good recreation opportunities, improved quality of life for Euclid, and do it in a way that's going to be fiscally responsible, and hopefully you'll be able to have new facilities at a minimal increased cost to the city's budget. Can't promise that, but based on the way you make your decisions, we have done that in other communities. Do we remember how much the operating deficit is right now? Okay. So, do you have any idea what your operating deficit is right now?
Mr. Stevens?
We make money, don't we?
Okay.
He just asked. Thank you, Mr. Bradstetter.
Thank you. And I have one more. One more
Councilwoman
question, and this is directed towards the administration. Within this study, are the schools a factor, the school pools? And because I know a lot of, residents use the school pools for lap swims and whatnot, so just curious how that plays into everything as well.
Mrs. Love?
I certainly think that could be something that we incorporate in the community outreach portion, and certainly that may be something that as the community starts to vision what exactly the aquatics program looks like, I think having as many stakeholders involved, especially with the recent loss of the YMCA, it would be wise to expand that. We have specifically focused on outdoor pools, and this also speaks to Councilwoman Cavanagh's question about timeline, because we know that there is an immediate need in terms of the expenses that will need to be spent going into summer 2019, just in terms of repairs that are short-term repairs, as well as our, our knowledge of existing attendance and having to shut down some pools. So again, based on feeling like this is a positive reception rather of this consultant that we anticipate having at the next council meeting, this piece of legislation, which would allow us to move into their 4-month time frame in the middle of November, and then have a final document at the middle of March, which would be just enough time after consulting with our service department and recreation department to make some decisions for summer 2019.
Thank you. And then the last question I have is regarding cost for this type of service. Has that been discussed?
Mrs. Love?
Yes, so like I said, we received 3 responses to our RFP. We did not stipulate a cost range. In the RFP that was released, the responses that we got back certainly did have a sizable range to them. The consultant before you tonight is proposing $25,000 for the scope of work in the feasibility study that they've outlined to you here, which was the lowest of the cost of the RFPs that we were able to review. And I think that, coupled with their qualifications extensively in our area and their interest in Euclid, made them the best qualified to present to you here tonight.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from any other Councilman Jaros?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think this is important. It's within our master plan to do these sorts of studies to get a better understanding as we move forward. Just a question, though, to the folks at Brandstetter. We're trying very hard to not be stagnant. And I think if you did a study of what are the needs for the Euclid community in 2017, 2018, they might be pretty different than what we would hope they would be 2025. So I guess my question is, from a analysis perspective, will we be able to get, hey, this is where you are, and this is what you can support today, but if you're doing X, Y, and Z, and, for example, we just completed a master plan that we're working pretty diligently towards implementing, that we hope our community is much more engaged as we move forward. We're much more vibrant, much more active. Is there a difference between, I'd hate to say we need to shut a bunch of things down, and then 5, 10 years from now, we shut them down, and now there's a potential need, and we haven't addressed it.
Thank you. Mr. Brandstetter?
we're going to be looking at strategies, and we'll identify what the need is now. And then we'll also be looking at forecasts of, pardon me, what population might be, say, over the next 5 years. My guess is that your strategies would end up being a phased program if it becomes a multi-facility program, with the idea being that you could add additional things as time went on. A lot of communities might have one large aquatic center and then supporting spray grounds because of the low operating cost of a spray ground. So that, yes, that would allow you to, if the population goes up, you could respond in that way. And, but I don't see any major demographic changes that might occur that could not be accomplished or could not be, if you will, worked with over time, such that the final plan would work pretty well regardless of where the demographics go.
Can I add to that? So part of what we look at when we're designing pools, the reality is at any given time, 20% of the people are in the water. 80% of the people are on the deck or grass. So one of the ways to build in that flexibility is to look at what is within inside the fence, because that gives you some flexibility of when you have really high use days and lower use days. So there's ways that we can build it into the initial design as well. But we know when you're building something, it's going to be there for the next 30 years. So, you know, we want to make sure that whatever we're recommending will meet your needs as we can, best we can anticipate today, much into the future.
Thank you. Any further questions from my colleagues? All right. Director Stevens, was there anything that you wanted to add? No? Okay. Well, I thank you so much for this presentation. I do want to say, when I first heard aquatic system planning study, I thought, oh no, they're going to start shutting down our pools. So to hear that this is a, you know, a broad study to really see how we can increase attendance at our pools, to bring in more revenue. I know with the community, a lot of, you know, cost is number one on people's minds. What is this going to cost the city? And so to think that we're looking at that and looking to actually generate more revenue and move towards the future is very exciting. So thank you so much, Nancy, for this wonderful presentation. Thank you, Mr. Brandsetter. We really appreciate it. Is there a motion or any desire to have this sent to full council with a recommendation or without one?
I'd make a recommendation, Madam Chair. Is there specific legislation attached to this, though, or is this just a presentation?
Ms. Love?
Tonight, this is just a presentation. There's no need
So
to
there's
make a
nothing-
recommendation to council. It will appear for the first time at council at the next council meeting.
Okay.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, with that being said, is there anyone, we do have a full agenda, is there anyone in the audience that came specifically for this agenda item? I don't want to just fully open it up only because they are going to do some heavy community engagement, and so it looks like there will be several meetings that we can really have conversations. But if you showed up tonight specifically for this, I do want to give you the opportunity to ask any questions. Is there anyone? Step up to the podium. Make sure that your green dot is lit up there. State your name and your address, please.
Hi, I'm Brian Scheider. My address is 44 East 224th. I have a master's in sports management. I'm a certified pool operator. I've worked for the city since '96. There's a couple of things that I wanted to address. The building schedule, I'm just curious as to that because we're hosting the Suburban League Championships on July 25th and 26th, 2020. That has 3,000 people coming. Also, I've attended many pool conferences, national ones, local ones. Most recently in 2016. Programming always precedes design. We need to adjust programming before we build a pool. I feel that Memorial needs updating. There's a lot of things that the small pools offer that Memorial doesn't, and vice versa, like For swim team, we have 10, there's 8 lanes, but we haven't actually practiced size of like 15 or 20. We use like a ridiculous amount of pool space, and some of the parents here can attest to that. So I'm curious as to that. I'm curious as to seeing what the city or what the company can offer in so that we can do things simultaneously like swim team or swimming lessons and multiple use in the same pool during the same time to update programming and such.
Thank you. Mr. Branstetter?
Well, when we talk about recreational aquatic programs to be offered at the facility, that's part and parcel to our study. And those programs come out in the citizen engagement process, number one. We ask people what they would like to do, and we can't promise we'll do it all, but we will do those things that are practical and say within some semblance of budget. Another group would be stakeholders, whether you've got competitive swimmers, whether you have instructional people, whatever service might be offered at the pool, at the aquatic center. If there's a stakeholder that's interested, we'd like to hear from them. We'll also expand a little bit to maybe do some things that you've not done before, that other communities are doing around the country. And so we'll bring that out and talk about it. And stakeholders such as yourself, obviously we hope we can have your input. And then, pardon me, then when you look at the programs, you decide to yourself, if we're going to have a program, how will that fit into the fee structure? How will that fit into the cost structure? Do you have that service offered by your own city staff, or do you have a provider come in and provide it, as a vendor? So those are some of the things you have to get into, and whatever design recommendations we make will be in terms of what programs the city wants to offer. I think that's the key thing. I totally agree. Too many times, people let the facility tail wag the program dog. And so we want to get away from that whenever we can. Right. Did we answer your question all right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure that was definitely a part of things. Because, like you said, shallow water can help. Shallow water makes money. That's where the money comes from. And so making sure that Memorial is a zero entry, and we can get into all this. I can talk for days about all the facilities. So I just wanted to.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Was there anyone else that came specifically for item number 1? All right. Well, with that, I will say thank you to Branstetter. We appreciate your time. You're very welcome. Moving on to agenda item number 2. And again, sorry, before I say that, of course, we will have you, Allison will be in touch. We'll talk to you in regards to coming back and making a presentation to full council. Thank you. Thank you. Have a good evening. All right, so the next agenda item that we have here, again, is Ordinance 228 -1988, which was an emergency ordinance amending Section 94704 of the Streets, Utilities, and Public Services Code of Codified Ordinance of the City of Euclid relative to dogs in public places. I'm so thankful to Ms. Joyce Washura, am I saying that right? For bringing this to my attention and having a passion to want to bring this before the city and before council and to this committee. We talk about how we can make our city, more enjoyable by all residents. And some of those residents we forget about, which are our furry residents, right? Our lovely pets. And so today we're going to have a discussion to talk about how we should look at going forward dogs in public places. And I just want to read a couple of highlights from an email that I received here that talked about what the benefits would be for having the dogs here, and then just have a dialogue on that. I am a firm believer that we probably do need to look at this ordinance and see about changing it. Only because not only do I believe in what was said here, but dogs are a part of people's families, right? And so when you go to the park, when you go have a picnic or whatever you do, you like to include all of your family members. And there's nothing more enjoyable than being able to take your dog, toss a ball, throw a frisbee, and have your family pet there with you as well. If you're me, your pets are not pets, they are your babies, they are your children. You can't claim them on your taxes or anything, but you probably should be able to. So I want to just have a discussion of that. You know, it used to be a time where animals were left out of everywhere, right? You see a sign on the door going into a gas station or a restaurant. It says no shoes, no shirt, no service, and no dogs. Well, now I'm not seeing those no dog services signs anymore. I am noticing that I've seen dogs in Costco's. I have seen dogs in Dave's supermarket. I've seen dogs in places that I never thought I would see a dog in. And so it seems that our idea of dogs are changing. Our perception of what dogs are and what they mean to us is changing. And so a couple highlights here. Number one, it talked about dog walkers serves as a free safety patrol, keeping an eye on what happens, reporting problems, and greatly improving safety. You know, we talk about our parks and, you know, the community feeling safe, and we think about the lakefront development and, you know, how that's coming about. And one of the things I think having there would be having dogs be able to go down there. It increases the activity in parks, which would then allow people to feel safer, right? Then we had dogs. Essentially, anyone who owns a dog considers dogs to be family members. This means almost half of households have dogs and pay taxes for a park that one of their family members can't use. And then it also stated that those family members have to go somewhere else. So it seems that our surrounding cities do offer and allow dogs into their parks. Dog ownership has increased by 29% in the last decade. More places are becoming more dog-friendly, such as stores, pools, even restaurants. It helps attract residents to communities. Again, most of Euclid's surrounding communities are dog-friendly. So I just want to kind of open up. I'm going to read the current ordinance, and then I want to open up dialogue so that we can have a conversation. Ms. Joyce, if you don't mind, I'd also, because you were so passionate about this, I'd like to bring you up as well so you can kind of talk and tell us what your thoughts were and how you think we can kind of make changes, if that's okay with you. All right, so let me just read the ordinance that took place, and if you don't know, behind the dash is the date. So this was enacted back in 1988 by Mayor Lynch. And it says, an emergency ordinance amending section 94704 of the Streets, Utilities, and Public Services Code of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Euclid relative to dogs in public places. Whereas the subject matter of this ordinance constitutes an emergency in that the same provides for the preservation of the public peace, safety, and welfare of the citizens of the City of Euclid. Now, therefore, be ordained by the Council of the City of Euclid, State of Ohio, Section 1, that's Section 947.04 of the Streets, Utilities, and Public Services Code of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Euclid, as therefore in effect, B, and the same is amended to read as follows. A, dogs, whether accompanied by its owner or person in charge or otherwise, shall not be permitted onto public parks, playgrounds, and the golf course. Dogs trained to assist the blind or deaf are exempt from this provision. Animals other than dogs will not be allowed to run at large, and if found within the park, limits may be impounded. No animals of any kind will be allowed to enter any of the lakes, ponds, fountains, or streams. Owners of dogs or other animals damaging or destroying park property will be held liable for full value of the property damaged or destroyed in addition to the penalty imposed for a violation. There's two other sections, but tonight we're going to focus on that section A, and that is being dogs, whether accompanied by its owner or person in charge or otherwise, shall not be permitted onto public parks, playgrounds, and the golf courses. And of course, that excludes service dogs. So at this time, Ms. Joyce, I'll have you, if you want to come up, you can come have a seat up here. And while you're doing that, I will see if there are any opening comments from my colleagues. None? All right. And then just push the little gray button. That's fine. And just state your full name and your address for us, please.
Full name is Joyce Washura, and I live on 230 East 272nd Street.
Thank you. And so what made you bring this to our attention for this evening?
I have a dog, obviously, and I take my dog out of the city because I can't walk the dog at Sims Park. I go to the Willowick Park quite frequently, where I run into lots of other Euclid people who go there as well, wanting a lakefront park to walk their dogs, but not being permitted to do it at Sims Park. So, I mean, that's really where my personal, interest in it came from. I've been in the city for, I'm not going to tell you exactly how long, but long enough to have remembered when you could have a dog at Sims Park. And so that's why I brought it up. I put it out on the community Facebook page back in August to find out what kind of reaction I'd get from other citizens. And I got a lot more positives than negatives. There were some negatives, and the two most common objections to it that I got were that the cleanup, obviously, because as I understand it, that's why we stopped permitting dogs at Sims Park. And the other was liability. There was a question, several people brought up, well, what if the dogs bite? And my answer to that was, well, it would be the same thing as a public sidewalk. It would be the liability of the dog owner, the same thing. That's why I addressed that in the email that I sent. So anyway, I think the time has come. I think that there are a lot of good reasons, a lot of good benefits that we can get from it. So I talked with the director of the Lakefront Lodge in Willowick and asked him about the experience that they have in terms of compliance, because I know the cleanup is a big issue. He told me it's not a problem there, and he was quite surprised to learn that Euclid didn't permit dogs in their park. He didn't know that. Anyway, he said that signs and bags were critical for it to succeed, that you absolutely need that, but that they really don't have, it's really not an issue for them there. And they've had dogs all along. He can't remember. He's been, I forget exactly how many years he said he was there, but he said from the beginning that he's been there, they've always permitted dogs. Now understand that's state-run, so it's a little different. Anyway, I think that we've reached the point culturally where it's accepted and understood that you clean up after your dog. First, it's illegal, so you are required by law now to pick up after your dog. And second, there's a lot of peer pressure. I think it's more understood. I know that when I go to Willowick, there is always a group of dog walkers there, and there is peer pressure, We would need to get that group into Sims Park, because I think that when people do ignore the rules is when nobody's around to see what they're doing. But I think as long as we've got a crowd of dog walkers there, you're not going to see that, because other dog walkers are going to pressure some compliance. It's never going to be perfect, but I think the time has come.
Thank you. And I can tell you that you are right when it comes to peer pressure. I know I think of when I'm sitting on my porch and I see young kids walking their dogs, and unfortunately no one has told them they need to pick up the poop. Oh, but I have bags. And so I'm like, do you need a bag for that? And they'll, oh, okay. And you know, it's an easy conversation to have. They usually take the bags. I know when I do my welcome baskets for families, if I notice that they have a dog, I include those dog bags in there, so that way they know, hey, we expect you to pick this poop up. And in most families, as you stated, that understand the health causes, you know, the risks when you don't pick up the poop, and you know, you expose your dog to things like parvo and things of that nature, they are mindful and to say, you know, I need to pick this up. So I mean, I think that there may be time for us to change, especially when we talk about how we want to attract younger families, and we want to be forward-thinking as a city and move forward. So I thank you for bringing that up. I'm sure it's something that many people have thought about, but it is critical that we do probably supply those pick up the poop bags. I know you see them throughout the metro parks. I know if you walk up Euclid Creek, there every so often you'll see those bags there, and people are using them because the things are empty a lot, or you know, they're running low. So thank you for bringing that up. Are there any comments at all? Councilwoman McIntosh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mrs. Wushura, right? For bringing this up. I received an email several months ago from another resident. She's also in the audience, Ms. Hernandez, and she questioned it, and at that time I brought it up to the mayor and the service director because it was surrounding Sims Park, and the issue was, well, we have the disc golf field there, and how would players react to people just walking around in the park with their dogs, and if they don't pick up their droppings, et cetera. But a good point is the amount of geese droppings that you have to dodge when you're walking through that, so it's almost like a moot point. However, the disc golf course, I think, is still a concern for Sims Park. I mean, I agree. I think dogs add another liveliness to a neighborhood and to community, and if we're losing residents to go to Wycliffe, and I understand our dog park is not frequented very often, and this is probably why, because it's not an ideal location to bring your dog to, unless you really like the woods. But losing residents to a different community, to me, that means that if they're driving, you know, the 10 minutes or so over there, especially at Lakefront Lodge, where it's right around a huge shopping center, and you know, they might be looking around at amenities, and that could be something that these residents think, hey, you know what, this is a decent community, maybe I'll move here. I mean, that's pretty extreme, but it's probably a thought at some point. So I do think that we need to catch up with the times. I mean, 1988, and as Councilman Wotia, we do have problems with names, I'm sorry, Wotilla, mentioned, you know, the underlying portion of this is probably an amended version. So that seems to be what we might want to take away. And I mean, as long as, I don't know if we have somebody from the disc golf course, a representative that we can talk with. I have no idea who runs that program, but maybe get their opinions before we take action. But I would support making some changes for sure. I think it's a benefit to the community, and that's my long-winded comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I comment on that?
Sure.
Former council person Pat Delaney I approached him about this as well years ago, and he told me, now this is hearsay, but he told me that he spoke to several teams that did disc golf that were upset that they couldn't bring their dogs with them.
Thank you for bringing that up, because that's an interesting take on it, too, is what if you're playing golf, disc golf,
'Cause
and
they
you have your
liked
dog
playing
with
with
you?
their dogs.
And they would probably want to catch a Frisbee, too. So that's a really great point. I also forgot to mention that when I talked to the mayor about this, she mentioned maybe starting off with a pilot program. Maybe you have a 30-day, 60-day, 90-day period where you allow dogs in the park, see how it goes, and then you take more permanent action. So that's a thought as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that's a good idea, maybe taking a look at getting a pilot, but I guess what we could do is probably further the discussion, speak with those that run the disc golf program. Councilwoman President, sorry, Madam, Mancuso.
Joyce, let me ask you, when you were talking to the Wycliffe folks, how did they police? Because the Wycliffe Lodge is state-run, correct? They don't run it? Okay, so they had nothing to do with enforcement, correct?
They have people there during the day,
They meaning Wycliffe or
they in Wycliffe, or
Okay.
Willowick.
Willowick? Sorry.
Yes. However, when I asked him about enforcement, his response was to compliance, not enforcement. He told me that's not a problem. They don't have to enforce it. He tells me that with the signs and the bags, he said it's not perfect.
Right.
There's one group in the morning with a big dog that they do have to clean up after. They know it, you know, and what they've done talking to the person, I don't know. But it's the enforcement isn't an issue. It's not like they're out there watching people and making sure that they simply don't have anything to pick up and the people police themselves, essentially.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilman Jaros.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I can't believe 1988 was 30 years ago. That's, but I agree, and thank you, Joyce, for bringing this to our attention. One of the things we, as a city, promote relative to maybe further out suburbs is we have sidewalks, we are walkable, et cetera, et cetera. The fact that we have people taking their dogs, putting them in cars, driving them somewhere else just to walk them seems a little silly. I also think to the concern of waste. If you're somebody who's going to take your dog, put them on a leash, walk into Sims Park, you're also conscientious enough to understand what you're doing. I think this isn't predisposed to sort of vandalism or people taking advantage of it. I just think as long as we as a city have it properly marked, have bags available, I definitely agree that we will be able to police ourselves. You know, as a pilot program, you know, I would give it a year plus. Frankly, I don't think we need to micromanage this too much. You know, we're going to have the boardwalk, we're going to have the lakefront. We want people down there. We want people to enjoy themselves, and if they want to bring their dog down there to enjoy it, as long as it's on a leash and they do the proper thing, I don't see this being an issue, and I think the time has come to, frankly, to the ordinance, just get rid of A altogether. The only thing I would have, if you look at C, we have no animals of any kind will be allowed to enter any of the lakes, ponds, fountains, streams. If you want your dog to run in Lake Erie, I think that's fine too. I don't think there's any harm in that. So I think this definitely needs some attention. We could tailor a little bit more to where we are in 2018, but no, Joyce, thank you again. This is probably a long time coming. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Cavanis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Joyce, I truly enjoyed reading your email and feeling the passion that you have toward this. And as our chairperson, chairwoman stated, our dogs are our family. And I know with millennials coming along, I'm way past that now, but I know that with my son and his wife, they delayed having children, but they had 3 dogs, and they took care of them just like their children. And that's what a lot of people are doing. They don't necessarily have children, and as you get older, your children grow up, and your pets become your new children. You know, they become the loves of your life. So why not open it up? When you're leaving home and you want to go somewhere and you want to take your dog with you, why not have a place where you can take your dog and not have to drive so far? And I agree with my colleagues as well with the statement that Councilwoman McIntosh stated, that if you have to drive so far to take your dog and you start looking at the surrounding area, it's kind of enticing to say that maybe I should move here instead of living where I'm not as welcomed and my love is not as welcomed as well. And I pay taxes here, so we need to look at it. I think it's kind of funny, though, when we read this ordinance, and that's going to the ordinance now, where it says no animals of any kind. What are we talking about, no animals? We're looking at squirrels, chipmunks, you know, what, no animals of any kind? But I know we're focusing on A, and when we talk about the public parks and playgrounds, I'm wondering if, as Councilman Jarrow said, if we can give it a year, have a year's pilot, maybe just looking at Sims Park or identifying certain parks to look at, to say that this is what we're going to do, because then how are we going to, what are the costs involved in providing the bags? I know we have signs that a lot of people sometimes take, like they've taken from a playground near me, you know, you put signs there and then all of a sudden they're gone. So what are the costs involved? So if we could identify just a few of the areas that we want, that would be good. And then the golf course, are we actually going to consider dog walking in the golf course, or would we keep that out? So when we're amending it, you know, we need to look at amending it and maybe not involving the golf course, keeping that just the public parks and maybe one or two playgrounds that we look at, and then also the cost involved in that. So we need someone here that can actually tell us how much it will cost to have the equipment to hold the bags, along with, I know the signs aren't that expensive, but the bags might be. So that's my 2 cents with that.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Yeah, I look at this ordinance and I think, boy, this person must really wanted a dog and couldn't have one. Because you think, I would never think to take my dog to a golf course. You know, you go to golf course to golf. So I definitely would want to hope that we don't have to legislate every detail. Some things would seem to be common sense, but I mean, maybe we'd have to say, okay, not the golf course, only parks. But I do want to read something. I did see your hand, Councilwoman McIntosh, but before I go there, I just want to read point 2 from this email. It says, dog ownership is healthy. According to a Swedish study of more than 3.4 million people published in the Journal of Scientific Reports, owning a dog is linked to a longer life. The study found that folks who have dogs reduce their risk of death by 11% and cut their chances of cardiovascular death by 15%. The bond between people and their dogs lowers stress, reduces depression and isolation, and generates happiness, and walking dogs improves fitness, which makes it important to have appealing locations to walk a dog, like a lakefront park. And I wanted to point that out because we talk about a lot of times with our seniors and how they're such a beloved part of this community. And a lot of times they have dogs, and it's those dogs that help get them out of the house, that keep them active, that, you know, if I can't take my dog for a walk or if I can't take my dog to a park, I may be less apt to have a dog, which means now I'm at home alone, hoping someone comes to check on me, or, you know, just me and the TV dinner, and that's not how I would want to picture our seniors living lives. And so I've had a dog or cat or both all my life, and I couldn't imagine not having them or not being able to take them places. And I have taken my dogs to the dog park. They don't like it. I don't know if it's the gravel or whatever it is, but they don't like it. But again, you don't want to be isolated. You want to be able, you know, I think dog parks are great when they're great, but you don't want to have to be isolated, right? You want to be able to just get up, leave your house, walk from your house to a park, and have a normal day at the park with your animal. So, Councilwoman McIntosh and then Councilman Watilla.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just was reading through this again, and point B, animals other than dogs will not be allowed to run at large, and if found within the park limits may be impounded. So wouldn't that contradict point A? So what does that mean? You know, so I would probably want to have our law director look through A through D,
Yeah,
clean it up, and just,
because that's
yeah.
actually against our dog ordinance also, because they're not allowed to run at large. Dog, it says other than dogs. Dogs aren't allowed to run at large.
Right,
Right,
So
right.
this needs more work.
yes,
So good thing that it was brought up.
absolutely, absolutely. Thank you,
Thank you.
Councilwoman. Councilman Watilla.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Joyce, for bringing this up. Just a couple comments as we look forward to the change then. I know Joyce's initial thought was Sims Park, so maybe there should be some discussion. If we are considering changing the ordinance to allow dogs, is it restricted to the dogs at Sims Park, or do we open up dogs to Memorial Park? Trying to think what other parks we have. I'm sure there's others that I can't think.
Hero Park.
Pardon me? Hero Park. Yeah.
Hillendale.
Yeah, Willow Park, Roosevelt, well, that's a school, but Willow has a park. So I don't know, maybe what's our thoughts on that? Because that will come up as the legislation is changed. And if we do a pilot for a year, do we change the law? Or do we just say that there'll be a pilot for a year? And that may be a question for the law department. But I think it's as things we should be thinking about as we consider changing the ordinance to allow dogs. And I am supportive of it.
Thank you. Councilman Watilla, I will definitely ask the law director what the best course of action would be when we talk in terms of a pilot, if a pilot is needed. I mean, it may be one of those things where, you know what, we just remove the ban, we just do it, and then if we find out that we're squishing all over the place or dogs are running mad, then we change it back or we put another restriction on it. I don't like the idea of just, me personally, of restricting it to Sims Park, because if I don't live near Sims Park, then again, I'm putting my dog in the car and having to drive it somewhere. If I'm close to Tungsten Park, let me walk my dog at Tungsten Park. If I'm close to Willow or Hillendale or Hero, let me walk my dog there and see how that goes. So with that being said, are there any other questions or comments?
Could I make one more comment?
Absolutely.
And maybe I'm preaching to the choir and should just keep my mouth shut because things are going so well. But one other consideration with regard to the security and the fact that dog walkers are great safety people, you know, I mean, we're great for safety. I just lost my train of thought there. If one of the things that came up on the boards with regard to the boardwalk, there are a lot of people concerned about safety with regard to the boardwalk. Is there going to be enough lighting, and you know, who's going to be on the boardwalk, and this is hopefully something that could help that. Absolutely. Because if you've got dog walkers out there, then you've got people that are patrolling it regularly, keeping their eyes open and reporting anything that happens. So just wanted to make that point as well.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Councilman.
Just one last comment, and I would definitely be open to all public parks. But Joyce, if you put an idea on Facebook and only received a little bit of negative feedback, then it must be a home run.
It must be.
Who's anybody traversed our websites? Thank you.
Thank you for that. That is so true. Well, I thank you for bringing this. As my colleagues stated, I definitely think we need to look at the whole ordinance, which excites me because one of our goals as a council was to look at the ordinances that we have on the books, see if they're still relevant, and make changes where necessary. So again, thank you for reminding us of what we said we would do, and holding us to it. So is there a motion to move this back to council, or what should our next steps be? Just work on it? All right, so we'll work on this, and you should see something coming up within the near future. Again, thank you so much.
Thank you all.
All right, moving on to the third and final agenda. Last but certainly not least, I will not rush. So if we go past 8 o'clock, then I won't hurt anyone. No one will hurt me, I hope. But I just want to read, the last one is community gardens discussion. So recently we renewed the lease for Memorial Park Garden, and as you know, if you don't know, they moved last year into the old volleyball courts that weren't being used. And so that was their second time being moved. And so hopefully they have found a more permanent home now. But in looking at that, and then the recent event that was there about the urban gardening, there's a community garden over by me. I know there are other communities such as South Euclid. I want to say they have about 9 different community gardens, and then we had one with the Colonial Park Association, and it seems like they are growing in popularity. It seems like as a country that we are more health conscientious, and we are, wanting to be sustainable. We want to make sure that we have fresh vegetables without harmful additives and things of that nature. And so people are looking at growing their own fresh produce. So what I wanted to do is look at how we as a city could kind of support these efforts. What is it that we can do? Let's get some feedback from those who have gardens, who have had gardens, who are interested in starting gardens, and see, is there a streamlined way of being able to address our community garden as a city. I don't think that, I think South Euclid is governed by a CDC, and then I think Highland Heights, their city, runs theirs as well. So I don't know if it's something that the city should manage, but again, it's like if we give a rain barrel to one, then can we have a program to make sure that we're giving a rain barrel to every garden? Or if it's a 1-year lease, or a 5-year lease, do we make sure that everyone has a 5-year lease? Just kind of look at how we're doing things, if we need a resolution in place, or, what can we, again, as a city, just do to kind of support community gardens. So with that being said, I would like to call 3 people up to the stand because they have gardens, have helped revitalize garden, or into 4 people, sorry, or have, been into the whole urban gardening thing recently. And so if you don't mind, I'd like to call up Ms. Joyce Garcia, Steve McIntosh, Rachel, and Mrs. Sarita Page Lee, if I know, if you would all just come up and kind of share with us, your gardens, your garden story, your thoughts on how we can move forward as a city, and then what can we do to help us be better gardeners. Thank you. And if you can kind of just introduce yourself, say your name, your address, and then how you are associated with gardening in the great city of Euclid.
Steve McIntosh, 261 East 214th Street. I have a plot in the Memorial Park Community Garden. I helped write an Engage Euclid grant last year that gave us funds for promotional materials and some rain saucers, and which helped increase the amount of people in the garden from 9 plots to 18.
Nice.
I'm Rachel McDonald, 19600 Edgecliff Drive. I interned with the City of Euclid in planning and development this summer, and then I organized the urban farm and garden event that you referenced that was held at the end of summer, and kind of did some engagement with the community gardens like Memorial Park throughout the summer, and I'm studying it in college right now. So.
Awesome.
Hi, Hi, I'm Joyce Garcia, 21371 Edgecliff Drive, and I am the Memorial Park Community Garden leader.
Hi, I'm Sarita Page Lee, 1255 East 279th Street, Unit K. I was the community garden leader back in the 90s on East 279th Street where the pool was. Once the pool got filled in with soil, we lost our water access, so the community garden was closed down. It briefly opened back up last year and this year. We do have cisterns out there for water, but it's very limited, and I would like to open up the garden again for the community in that ward.
Awesome. All right, I guess we can start with Ms. Garcia. Can you give us a little history on Memorial Park Garden, how it got started, how you've been able to maintain it over the years, and what you see for it going forward?
Okay, Memorial Park Community Garden has always been in Memorial Park. We were first at the grasslands now, but right next to the jail. We were there. And then the county, I believe, was going to take over the jail, and we needed to move because they needed to get to the sewer system, which was running underneath our garden. We then moved next to the tennis courts, but that field was pretty much an old parking lot, from what I assume, well, what we were told, that the soil was very, very bad. It was not deep. You could find lots of asphalt, and we were there for several years, but the weed situation, the people going through our garden because of, they were living in the apartments there, they were going to the basketball courts, or they were going to the library, or they were going to the swimming pool. We had a lot of foot traffic going right through our gardens. So then we petitioned the city to move into the vacant volleyball courts. We have the amenities of a 14-foot fence that keeps the animals out, and we have no more deer problems. We have no more foot traffic going through. So that's all wonderful. We have a water line from the hydrant that is next to the tennis courts, and right now it's a hose going from the hydrant to our garden. I talked with Brian, and I don't know his last name. He works for the city, and he just came over the other day and drained the line and took off the fittings at the hydrant. So he winterized it for us for the year. But he was talking again about maybe putting in a more solid PCV pipe that would not be subject to bursting, or, it's right now it's just a garden hose that's buried, and garden hoses will wear out, and one day you might find a geyser, in that field, but we're pretty vigilant about turning the water off at the fire hydrant. But it is a hike for some of the people, especially in the summertime when it's very, very hot, to walk over there to turn the water on and off. That really is the only deterrent. We do have 3 water barrels that collect rainwater that Steve wrote the grant for, and people have been using those. The first year we had 13 plots, 9 gardeners. This year we doubled it. We have a total of 26 plots with 20 gardeners. Okay, some aren't quite as active as some other ones. Next year we're hoping to open up the last area to add another 12, maybe 13 plots. And we have people on a waiting list who have been wanting, we got a lot of names from the urban garden. They had the mailings that from the postcards that Steve had designed and Christine designed. You know, we've gotten quite a bit of interest there. So we can and will expand again next year, but we're limited. I mean, once we open up that last strip of land, we're done because, well, we have the fence around us. So, I mean, that's our limitation, is that fence. So if there is wide community interest in community gardens, we'll need to find some other place. And I did some research, and gardening is the #1 hobby in the United States. There's so many different, you know, health benefits for being outside. Another statistic I found said that the United States public spends 90% of their time indoors. What an awful thing. Let's get outside and enjoy it. But I drove around a little bit, and, you know, I saw a lot of backyard gardens, and you go by the apartment complexes, and even now at the tail end of the season, you still see container gardens out on all those balconies, and it's just a wonderful thing. People want to garden, and I think they should have more opportunity to do that.
Absolutely. Now, do you have any classes or anything, like if I'm a beginner gardener and I come to you and all I know is I want a garden or a plot, do you offer any kind of assistance or direction at all, or is it kind of you figure it out? And
Well, we have a lot of new people coming in, and if they need a mentor, if they have questions to ask, I mean, we are a community in that garden, so that if somebody has a question about how to raise okra, I mean, I can point them to Barbara. She would know exactly what to do. And there's other people who have more expertise in planting different crops or flowers. But we don't have anything formal within ourselves. It's just, you know, who can help each other.
okay.
But, and then that's not something that shouldn't be ruled out. I mean, some of us now have 7 or 8 years' experience in community gardening and can answer a lot of questions.
All right, and Mrs. Page Lee, I know you said that your garden was started and then you had to stop because you lost the water line, but it's recently started up again. Do you think you have a high interest of folks that would like to really get that garden going again? And if so, you know, what is it that you think would be helpful from us, the city, to be able to help with that?
The main reason why people stopped was the water. Okay. When we lost the water supply, all interest went away. That, and I guess if we had a fenced-in area, because the area is very large, and kids are playing there, which is fine. My kids were little, I would have them out there playing too, but the city, if we had like a fenced-in area there, that would be wonderful. And I think more raised beds. I have a raised bed that Josh did build for me, and I love it a lot better than what we had there before. So I think if we had that main aspect of it, the fence, the water, and the raised beds from the city, I think it would be a lot of people interested.
Okay. And then one of the things you, Steve, mentioned was, I'm looking at one name, but a different person. One of the things that you mentioned is that you applied for that engaged Euclid grant that was able to help you get materials for the garden, so the saucers and then publication, marketing material. And then, Ms. Paisley, I'm bringing that up. Have you all considered applying for that grant to help get some of the materials maybe needed for raised beds and things of that nature?
No.
Okay.
Because right now, it's just me.
Okay.
It's just me.
All right. Awesome. Awesome. Steve, can you tell me a little bit about how you got involved with Memorial Park as opposed to maybe going to another garden or starting another garden, or what drew you there?
Well, we were actually at a Summer at Sims event, and we got caught in the rain and went down in a pavilion and just happened to meet Joyce. and started talking, and she said she was a community garden leader for Memorial Park, and we said, well, we didn't even realize there was a community garden. So we started kind of batting around ideas on how we can get more people in there. So we got an email from Crystal about the Engage Euclid grant and kind of went from there. But to get people involved, there is a lot of vacant space, green space here in Euclid. And if we can get a list of those spaces, we could kind of look at which ones would maybe fit the mold for a community garden, and then we could target those areas and the community members around those areas with either old-fashioned door-to-door, just like, hey, do you want to be in, start a garden or be a part of it, do an all-call, robocall, and then also provide some other promotional materials that would be of very little cost to whoever decided to take the ball and run with this. And this would also tie into the master plan, which utilizing all that empty green space for a positive thing, get more people out in the community, keep the litter down in those areas, that kind of stuff.
Okay, awesome.
So that would be kind of where we would want to kind of start to move forward.
Wonderful. So you're interested in kind of helping the city as a whole move forward with
Yeah,
community
absolutely.
gardens in the area, maybe helping Mrs. Pagely, helping me revitalize the one in our area as well.
Absolutely. I've only been gardening for a few years. I run a learning garden down at the school I teach at, and have only been in Memorial Park for a year, but I have some free time, so I would like to, help out other people start a garden.
Cool, cool. And Mr. Garcia, you said you had a waiting list for Memorial Park Garden. Can you tell me about how many people are on that waiting list?
If I'm remembering correctly, we had 9 or 10 people sign up from the urban fair, and then there was an open house at the greenhouse,
Yeah, there was an open house at the greenhouse.
and several more people signed up, to get information from
Also
that.
the stroll. So we have about 20 to 25 people on our waiting that are ready to.
Yeah. But, like I said, we have at most 13 plots that we can open up at Memorial Park.
All right. So what it sounds like is we have a desire from the community to garden, but if you're just looking at Memorial Park, there's not enough space to accommodate those residents that have the desire. So that's where maybe your area will come in, Mrs. Pagely, the area over by myself or somewhere else, if we target those. Mrs. Lucas C. Love, can you tell us if there are any grants, programs, or any other cities that kind of have models for a community garden? I know I mentioned South Euclid and Highland Heights, but were you able to find anything else in your research?
Yeah, so to the councilperson, I'm going to preface this by saying that Commissioner Benno is probably more of an expert, as are the rest of the people sitting up here, than I am. But I did do a little bit of research, and I have some information from our department that could potentially be of use based on some of the comments and questions I'm hearing tonight. So I think in our immediate area, South Euclid certainly is a model for community gardens. As Councilperson Hill mentioned, that is run through their Community Development Corporation. But they also have a strong refugee community that has participated in a few of their gardens that I know the city has helped get others from the community involved and, learning about new foods and new way to prepare foods. In the city of Cleveland, the Cuyahoga County Land Bank as well as the Cleveland Land Bank try to help vision certain spaces and do offer actually a similar program to what the city of Euclid has in terms of a pretty loosely defined one-year lease where no money is exchanged. You don't have to be a nonprofit or any type of corporation. You can be an individual. You don't have to have a whole bunch of people listed on your program right away. And so how that works here at the City of Euclid is that you would write a letter of interest based on a parcel that you know is available in the land bank here at the City of Euclid to Commissioner Benno, and he would review that. One of the projects that Rachel worked on this summer when she was here with us in the Department of Planning and Development was going through a very large database of land bank properties and tasking them whether they were more appropriate for development or whether it was more appropriate for it to remain green space, or some of the lots really vary in size. So some of them are more appropriate for a side lot expansion. Some of them might be, really just an ideal size for an expansion of a community garden. Actually right around the area of Memorial Park. So, that list is, probably something that we could get advertised pretty readily. It sounds like there may be a need for that. And the Engage Euclid grant is probably the most accessible of the funding opportunities that we have immediately available. So that's a $500 or up to $500 reimbursable grant that I believe is offered on an annual basis. And there are some other opportunities a little bit more globally. I believe right now Neighborhood Connections, which is a small up to $5,000 grant, is restricted to the City of Cleveland, but I believe that they're looking to expand that to Cuyahoga County, so that might be something coming available shortly. There's also organizations like the Cleveland Seed Bank and other nonprofits where instead of having to purchase seeds, you can get a wide variety, whether they're sunflowers or other types of flowers, or different heirloom types of vegetables that maybe you couldn't just buy at a Home Depot. Those types of resources are out there as well. But for anyone who's looking for a property, the first step really would be to identify that it is in fact a City of Euclid owned land bank property, and then draft a letter of interest that can be reviewed with Commissioner Benno. And while there's the limit right now, again, for what's readily available in terms of the $500 grant, I think, if there were a series of lots or a really great program that worked into our master plan or fit with council's priorities, the city is always very willing to work with those stakeholders to make sure that we can improve that quality of life and meet those goals that the city has put out.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And do you know about how many of those lots that we have that we've said, these really should just be used for green space? Do we have a number? Rachel?
I'm not going to put Rachel.
There's not like an exact number, but the inventory that I did includes photos, so I think with photos, and then it has the size of the lots, like taking that into consideration, you can see which spaces are larger and then the quality of like green space that each lot is. So I think taking that into consideration, like some are very obviously more like equipped to be an urban garden space. So just looking, I think, at the photos and the numbers for that would give you that information.
Yeah, and the city could go through that. I think condition of soil is something that was brought up. Also, how much shade there is for certain, that could be a benefit, but that could also be a deterrent to pick a certain location. But that is something that we can have available.
Awesome. Thank you. And Rachel, and Ms. Paisley, I do know that you needed to leave, so if you need to scoot off, that's fine as well. Rachel, can you share a little bit about your event that you held down at near Memorial Park Garden at the end of the season?
Yeah, so the event was in August, like mid-August, and it was really just like an event to kind of spark conversation and kind of engage the community with what urban agriculture and gardening we already have. So like Memorial Park Community Gardens hosted it with us and tabled at it along with some other urban farms and gardens in Euclid. There were about 5 different ones that tabled, and then some residents who have backyard hens or keep bees on their properties, which is recent legislation that was passed. We're tabling too, so it was a way for the community to kind of like see what was already going on. I think it had over 50 people attend, probably almost 100. Not everyone signed in, but yeah, it was a really exciting event. Everyone who came seemed really excited and like eager to kind of get something like this happening every year going forward, or more events. Also, I think residents who don't garden right now and want to, I think like a way to look at what the city can do, besides like the physical infrastructure like water and raised beds and fences, but also either provided through the city or maybe like partnering with organizations like OSU Extension is like a whole agricultural resource for people all over Ohio. I know Holden Gibbons, who has Veterans Combating Child Hunger Farm, uses a lot of resources from them, but partnering with them so that we can do like maybe workshops for people who want to like learn more about gardening and how they can do it. And then maybe like canning workshops, like preserving, so that like people who are growing all this food had a way to like use it throughout the winter. So things like that to like kind of engage the more like social side of it, I think would be really important and something that I saw like interest in from the event. But yeah, it was a very successful event, and I think like it brought together the whole community throughout the city, which because a lot of the gardens are in different areas of the city, so ways to like get that whole community together, I think, is important too.
Absolutely, thank you. I definitely say I enjoyed myself there. I had roasted beets for the first time there, that was made by Emily Holiday, and so never would have thought to taste a roasted beet. Council President Mancuso.
Thank you, dear. Here's what I'm looking for. You're the first and obviously the most successful. You've been through the growing pains. I think it is very true that other people are going to follow in your path. What I would like it to be for your people who follow you is much easier than it was for you. So if we could even have some type of a primer that you guys put together, doesn't have to be a dissertation, you know, just general points of gardening, what it takes to have a garden, what it means, how many plots, the water necessity, electric, fence, whatever, and then options or resources such as, you know, our $500 grant, some of the seeding programs, that kind of thing, to get people started. So that we also, at this end, are doing the same thing for everybody that wants to do this. And this is something that Councilwoman Hills brought up several times as we talked about it, and the whole idea of gardening has been in favor, not in favor, not in favor. So if we have a roadmap that's fairly consistent, people who come after you will learn and do it the same way, versus everybody having the first hard road all on their own. And certainly the city should partake in that, however big or small we need to be. But I think a primer is one of the very first things if we're going to go forward and have other gardens, which it sounds like that's what people are interested in, and actually looking at land that's available. There needs to be some kind of a guide that consistently says, oh yeah, we understand, this is our urban garden, this is what they do, this is what they have, this is what they need. And we don't have that right now. So I would say to you, the Adam and Eves of our urban gardening, a primer would probably be very, very helpful. And it doesn't have to be, you know, please, not a dissertation, because nobody who gardens is reading that. But from my perspective, it would be very helpful as we have gone through different pieces of property that were slated, then not slated, then had water, couldn't get water, water changed, who pays for it, all that. It really helps level the playing field for everybody.
Thank you. Any other questions?
She wanted to respond.
Oh, sorry. Ms. Garcia.
Madam President.
Chair to the President.
Chair. Okay, sorry. I have history from Memorial Park Community Gardens. We started with a mission statement. We started with rules. We had regulations. When this last move in, most of our leadership said they don't want to do it anymore, and I by defunct, got the job. excuse me, we didn't have the time or the resources to stay within all those rules and regulations that when we were a very large garden, we could do. When we were just fighting this last time to be in our new space and to get our gardens up, we simplified rules very, very down to the basics. But I do have all of that, and I can, you know, I can make it available, or I can do whatever you would like to do with it, and help maybe draft something.
What you as a group would like to do with it. Obviously, you've already said, from the first time we did this to now, we have simplified the rules and the regulations, because you probably didn't need that heavy of a structure, but you learned that through experience, clearly. So, you know, any assistance you have, because you've already made the mistakes, you've already found the path, so we're not reinventing the wheel. Sound like a plan?
It's a good plan. Simplify, yes.
Thank you, Madam President. Before I go to Councilman Jarros, I'll just add, I think, as you stated, having that basic framework, because I think each garden would be a little different. I know with our garden, we had like a flat fee that was an annual fee, and no one had one box. You had one box to manage. So we did like a lottery. Mrs. Love may get peppers. Steve, you would get tomatoes, collards, corn, but then we all harvest it together. So that way, if you're great at growing this one thing, be great at that, keep that box clean and neat, but then we shared at harvest time. But that's what worked for our community and what we were looking what our mission statement was, which was bringing people together. But having that basic framework so that we at least know how we as a city can help and be consistent, whether it's water for everyone or a fence for everyone or whatever that thing may be. So if you guys can get that together for us, that will be awesome. Councilman Jarros.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No real question, just more of a comment. And first and foremost, I want to say thank you for the folks here today. I think you're a great testament to just what a handful of dedicated residents and citizens can do when they put their heads together and really work towards something. Frankly, I've been an avid gardener ever since I've been a property owner. Greenhouses in the basement, the whole thing, everything was legal. Don't worry about it. And I've never been particularly impressed with Euclid Memorial Gardens until this year. And I thought what made the big difference was the event Ms. McDonald put together was fantastic. The fact that you folks were fenced in made a huge difference. You could just see there was much more care and attention to the space, probably because you knew you'd reap the benefits of that, given the space that you had. So again, thank you very much for that. It was absolutely great. You know, Mr. McIntosh writing the grant, it's just a couple $100 here, you cobble things together, then you have something that's great. What I think, and I want to dovetail a little bit off of what Ms. Lucas-Love mentioned, is I don't necessarily see Euclid Memorial Gardens expanding in terms of space as much as it expands in terms of influence, meaning let Memorial Gardens be the brain trust, if you will, and then Ms. Paige Lee is looking to do something in her area. Maybe we identify some in Ward 4, and then the folks at Euclid Memorial Gardens kind of be the teachers, if you will, or the mentors to really get this going throughout the community, because I know I've been working with the planning department looking for developmental lots that we could build new houses on. Well, there's lots you could build new houses on. There's lots that should be, as you said, for yard expansion, and those that don't fit that, maybe a garden makes the most sense. So I know, Ms. McDonald, that you're leaving, or you've interned, you're gone, but please stay involved. Anything you run into, of course, during your course of studies or interest, please shoot to Allison or myself, because I think this is a great, I think it's finally has some roots, if you will, to be much bigger and better than it is, and I think you folks deserve a lot of the credit, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? Councilwoman McIntosh. I'm sorry. Thank you,
Madam Chair.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So, yeah, again, just a few comments to add to everybody else. Ms. McDonald mentioned the OSU extension, and they're pretty prevalent in the greater Cleveland area. Just this summer, they had I think it was an 8-week workshop series of how to start a community garden. And unfortunately, it was like a Thursday night, and every night there was something that I had to do, so I couldn't attend to it. But I do have that person's contact info and can share it amongst whomever is interested. I'm sure they'll do it again, or perhaps it's something that we can actually bring to our community. Allison mentioned seeds in the seed bank, and the Board of Health, in partnership with Mark's stores, gives away free seeds. And Linda Beck in the mayor's office has some information on that. So anyone who's listening wants to get some seeds, you can contact me or Linda. And then I think as far as this, this packet of information that the garden may bring to us, you know, having an idea of how much space at minimum you should have would be important. Because I did bring, it's old, but in February, the list of land bank lots, and you know, some of them are really small. Some of them are pretty big. So being able to A/B those things and just mark off the ones that we can't even look at would be pretty beneficial. I believe that's it. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you. Any more comments or anything that I didn't touch on from our panel of guests? Absolutely. Thank you. You guys gave, I think, some great insight into urban gardening. I look forward to partnering with you, working with you. I love Mrs. Garcia's passion about gardening. She stopped me in the parking lot one day, like, Councilwoman Hill, I want to talk to you. Tell me why you voted this way. And I'm like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. But I thank you for that, and it allowed us to open up dialogue and to gain understanding for one another, and she was able to hear why I was thinking the way that I was thinking. But as stated, she really did open my eyes to what she's doing over at Memorial Park, and so I thank you for your efforts. I thank you for your passionate. It is that passion that really moves this community forward. You know, we may not always agree on what we should or should not be doing or how we should be doing things, but that passion drives us, and so I don't want any of us to lose that, whether it's about our pools, about dogs in parks, or about gardening, to ensure that we just hold on to that, and we will get where we are trying to be as a city. With that being said, my hard stop is 8:30, so we do have about 5 minutes. Is there anyone in the audience that wanted to comment on the garden or anything else that we've talked about tonight that did not get an opportunity to speak, maybe? No? All right. Well, again, thank you all for coming out. Thank you, everyone, for you know, giving us your comments, your thoughts, your suggestions, and we will continue as a council and as a committee to move forward and just work hard to make this the great place that you want to live in, work in, play in. And with that, I will take a motion to adjourn. All right, I have a first and a second. Meeting adjourned.
Hi, Ed. We're here today to talk about ways to prepare your vehicle and have an emergency kit in your trunk to prepare for bad weather. One of the first things I did was check with my mechanic, Santino from Auto City Auto Repair, and he said some of the things we can do include checking the condition and level of the coolant, check your tire depth and wear pattern, check your oil level and the condition of your wipers, and also check the battery level, the belts, and the hoses. You always want to make sure to fill up your gas tank. Don't let it get to empty. And one of my favorite things to do, just check the weather reports. Also go online. There's some great websites that will show you what's happening on the highways and what kind of bad weather or accidents may be out there.
Excellent advice, Kate. Also, have prepared ahead of time. a backpack. You can use something just like this. Have an emergency kit ready to go. Put it in the back seat of your vehicle in case the trunk freezes up on you. A little sign like this, call police if you really need help. Put it on the inside of your window. That might be helpful. Of course, a shovel to dig you out of a situation. That might be enough. Before you even start your car, get going that day. Make sure you wipe off the windows well. Make sure it has ice scraper as well. If you get stuck, you might need flares. Have a lighter handy. Even better yet, a triangle that lights up and illuminates the back of your car. I use a Tupperware full of sand. You can use kitty litter. You can put it under your tires. It might be just enough traction to get you through to the next phase of your journey. Well, jumper cables, of course. I will say, though, that the Euclid Police Department is our policy. We do not jump vehicles. We will help, push your car. We will help you get your keys out of your car if you lock them in there, but we will not jump your vehicle. So hopefully a good Samaritan comes by, gives you a hand with a jump. Kate, what do you have there?
Of course, it's always a good idea to bring those things that will keep you warm, such as hat, glove, and scarf. And you'll usually always have someone tell you to bring a blanket.
A rope is not a bad idea. Maybe somebody will come along. If you're in a ditch, they'll be able to pull you out, tow truck or whatever. So have a rope handy as well. Get one of these little tool kits for, I don't know, $7 or $8. Might be just enough to tighten up the lug nuts or the battery on your, the bolts and nuts on your battery to get you going. Flashlight, of course, and a cell phone charger. Have that as well, so you can make that important call if you need to. That's it. Be safe out there.
For Ed Bonchek, I'm Kate McLaughlin, and this has been Educate, Euclid Police Department's crime prevention outreach.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Good evening and welcome to the City of Euclid's Architectural Review Board this Thursday, October 25th. It's now 7:02. If you would all please stand and join me as we recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll now move forward with our roll call of members. Roger Dorr, Chairman, here. Kathleen Sonhalter, Member.
Here.
Robert Skillman, Jr., Secretary.
Here.
We'll now proceed with our approval of minutes. Mr. Secretary, are there any additions or changes to our meeting minutes from Thursday, August 23rd?
No, there are not, so I would like to make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge the depth of the projects that we have to review this evening. So we would really appreciate being able to exit the meeting having reviewed all the projects, and we would like respectfully to be able to do that by 9 o'clock. So if everybody could be efficient with their time and their comments during their presentations, the board would really appreciate that. With that said, Scott, could you now announce our first part of old business?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, our first case under old business is case number 2017-ARB-28. Patrick Higley, Business and Athletic Operations Director of and on behalf of Euclid City Schools, and Brandon Gellert, then Design Architecture, have submitted an application requesting design approval of additions and revisions to the new Euclid Middle and High School Plaza Area and Vocational Building located at 711 East 222nd Street, the CI Campus Institutional Use District. One motion requested.
Good evening.
We're here with following up some comments we got previously. Just as a little introduction, we went through bidding. We were fortunate that the district decided to accept the brick alternate. So the brick that we have shown you all along is in the project, as opposed to the base bid, which was a CMU product. So we're very happy about that. Also, the elevations as we presented them with more curtain wall rather than less curtain wall was accepted during the bidding process. So we think you're going to get a very good project as a result. I'm responding tonight to the comments that from the letter from Mr. Benno. The first thing is the trails plan, which you see on your first sheet. The big, I guess the previously submitted plan did not have this loop here, which was asked for by the mayor. And so that loop has been added. And then there's been some minor tweaks based on utilities that were.
Yes, sorry to interrupt, just so that you're caught up. This was submitted, and as part of the process, it gets routed back to zoning, planning and zoning, to ensure that everything that is in that submitted bid meets what was approved by planning and zoning and architectural review board. So in that process, we saw that planning and zoning had reviewed the paths project that Brad's talking about right now, and there were some things that we caught that was previously approved or not even heard, as what actually we're going to be hearing tonight by ARB, and that's what he's presenting right now. So some of it, like the paths, is just there for your information. No action needs to be taken.
Okay. Thank you.
Kind of the long and short of it is the district and the city have been working very closely together on the PATH project, and this is the final version. The next thing is the concession stand to the gym building. And one of the big items that, there haven't been too many changes, but we were able to align the piers of the bridge with the piers of the masonry. So actually I have a sheet for that. So you can see those on this sheet here. And I guess you're not putting anything up on the screen or anything. But these piers, the bridge was reconfigured structurally so that those piers align. Otherwise, the design is identical to the press box. Fencing, it essentially continues the detail of the press box railing that's already installed and in place, so including the black vinyl coated fence. So it's a continuation of that aesthetic. The next item was the vocational building. That is the building, the south end of the school by the old stadium. Right now it serves as a maintenance shop. It's a CMU building with some brick on the west side. Oh, and here's an overall elevation of the perspective of the building. It's this building back here. So the CMU portion this part is not being reskinned. This part and this part, this is an addition, which is the welding program that has a metal skin on it, which we're using also at the infill portions of the existing building. For instance, in these areas where the old halls that went north-south were removed, and we previously looked at that material. It's a profile similar to this, and the color is this redwood color, together with the brick palette, and the stain on the CMU will be this color as well. And then the last item was the board requested that the corner, which we had discussed many times, rather than the rounded corner, they preferred the square version. So this is the square version. You can see it continues the motif, and I think it falls in line with what we discussed for that end of the school. And you can see that in the rendering as well. So that's sort of an overview of the items. And we can go into more detail on anything you wish.
Thank you. Allison, do you have some comments concerning this submittal?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The applicant is requesting design approval for construction of a new concessions building addition and elevator to the east facade of the existing school building, which is adjacent to the new football stadium that has previously been reviewed and approved. In addition, the applicant has proposed this overhead walkway that has some revisions in front of you tonight from what we've previously reviewed that connects the new elevator tower to the existing press box that, again, was previously reviewed, approved, and constructed. The plan for the outdoor plaza has also been resubmitted for your review. The board reviewed concepts for this area in work sessions and presentations earlier this year, so this should be relatively fresh in your memory. And we've gone through multiple iterations of this design, and we do believe that over time staff has taken, the applicant has taken into consideration the board's recommendations, and we're thrilled to hear that some of the alternates have been accepted, including the brick and the addition of larger or more frequent window openings. So for the plaza, the staff does recommend the design of the plaza that's in front of you tonight. We do ask that the ornamental fence proposed around that plaza match the existing fencing and piers that the board had reviewed and approved for the stadium back in December of 2017. For the elevator building, staff does recommend full approval of that building as designed. Again, we think the applicant has taken into consideration the board's previous recommendations. For the elevated walkway, we do approve and appreciate the re-engineering of this design as presented before you tonight, so we would approve that, and as the applicant stated, would insist that the guardrail be the black vinyl coated fencing within that section to match the existing press box railing over at the stadium as well. One thing that came up in a staff review of the existing conditions over at the stadium along within the plaza, sort of connected to where this walkway would be, is that there have been some large pieces of public art installed. If those are permanent to remain, that would be something that the board should also review as part of this review of the overall plaza area. The concession stand, we would approve that as presented here tonight in your large drawing packet. The vocational building addition, we appreciate the effort to match existing conditions and think that the materials presented here work well for that building that sits to the east of the main campus, and would ask for the board's approval on that as well. And then lastly, for the media center, again, we think that the applicant has done a nice job of incorporating the board's recommendations and would request approval on how that southwest corner of the project has worked itself out. And so, with those small recommendations, overall, we would ask the board move for approval of what's being presented to you tonight.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The one thing that we really didn't get to see a whole lot of was the concession building. I know when you brought it to us before, we had a lot of concerns about, I think it was downspouts and how water from the roof was going to get carried away and how those were going to interact with the areas where you would go up and place your order. Could you walk us through the drawings and kind of point out the things that have changed to address those issues?
We're showing a painted PVC radiator at sort of third points. We think it fits in with the mullion pattern and with the overall aesthetic of the stadium, where you also have leaders from the press box and so forth. We don't think it is a detriment to the project, and it is because of the small size of the concession stand and the large roof area that covers and shelters the pedestrian, the client, the patron underneath the canopy. And after discussions with the client about the, the alternatives, this is where we're showing those PVC, and we're using the PVC because it's a tough material, and there was concern about it getting dented and so forth. So it's really overall, we think it's a minimal element that will blend well with the concession stand.
Remind me, that is basically what we saw back in February, was it not?
There was some, I'm not sure that we indicated that it was PVC at that point.
Okay, but the location.
The location is not, I mean, it's been well coordinated now with the mullions and the window pattern.
Thank you.
What other alternatives were reviewed with the school?
Well, having internal drains and bringing the piping down into the concession stand, but you can see how narrow that concession stand is and small. So we decided we didn't want to bring them down into there.
Were there any considerations about just enclosing them on the outside and with an aluminum material that would match the mullions in the window to conceal it? And
I think it just gets clunkier and bigger and chunkier.
Does the roof for the concession center extend out beyond where the patrons would be on the outside?
Yes, it comes out to, you can see in the section here, it comes out to covers the queuing area. I'm sorry, this way. Comes out to the queuing area.
I see. I think the other thing we were concerned about too was how the concessionary roof was going to appear and how it was going to drain internally.
Yeah, and we lifted that roof up. So at the last meeting, it was down partly from the precast. We actually lifted it up and brought it into that precast band.
So now you really can't see it sloping one direction or other, because it's below
behind the fascia.
Okay. Is the concrete foundation wall that the fence is sitting on, is that finished in any particular way?
Yeah, that has a rub finish.
And that's poured concrete?
Right, and it's similar to the stairs that are there and the existing precast.
Okay. Do either of the other members have some additional questions concerning the concession stand area?
so how does the vertical leader transition into the underground storm? Is there something like above the slab to accept the leader as it comes down?
Yeah,
and
there
then
is
isn't that a little bit
precast boot,
a precast boot?
which it's, it's a small precast section. Did I say precast? Ductile, cast iron, sorry, cast iron boot.
What's the finish of the aluminum fencing?
I'm sorry, the aluminum.
Fencing?
It's the same fencing, that material, just double, it's, aluminum picket rail. So in this case, it's the silver kind of aluminum finish to match the other rails around the stadium, the press box stadium and the rails at the stairs.
Is there a railing section?
So 12A. 12A.
Yeah, it's a number 2 on the top of this 12A.
So is that to be clear aluminum? Did I hear it right?
Yes. And you can also see that on 12C.
What would be the masonry materials used on the front of the concession stand?
Which masonry material?
Like color or?
It's to match the existing brick.
Oh, okay. So there's no new materials included within the concession area facade that's new or different?
No, it's really just to blend in with the base building, the north gym.
Okay. And the concession letters, is that, are those pin letters, that sign, how is that mounted?
They're cast letters, individual cast letters, pin mounted.
Okay. In cast aluminum?
Cast aluminum.
Clear finish? Clear aluminum?
Yeah, I'm not sure that the schools decided on the color for the signage, but.
Okay. Lighted?
Pardon?
Would it be lighted?
No.
Okay. And what's it mounted on?
It's mounted on the, it's mounted into the aluminum fascia.
Okay.
So is this just a concrete pad in front of the new building addition? Is this just concrete?
Right, there's a bunch of, there's paving there now, and it's essentially extending that paving.
What do they use this area for?
Right now, it's a maintenance garage, and they park their vehicles and so forth, and so this section would become carpentry, and this would be welding.
So what do they use this for out?
Right now, it's used as essentially a storage yard for
With the new building configuration, what would this area be used for?
just getting in and out of the building, essentially.
Pedestrian? No vehicular?
No, there would be vehicular, when they want to bring materials in for the welding shop or for the carpentry shop, that's the way they drive in.
Just through the, is this a overhead door here?
Yeah, there are overhead doors on
Here?
both sides.
So here and... So could that area be softened a bit? to reduce the amount of pavement?
Really needed for, right now, there is that much pavement, and it's really needed for maneuvering room. There are 2 overhead doors there. And the welding equipment, the things they weld can be quite large, so they wanted, some fairly big trucks to be able to come in and out. And it's really not much more paving than is there now.
That's beside the point. So are these trees going to remain here? They're not depicted in the rendering.
Yeah, the trees will remain, yes.
Is this fenced?
Yes, it is fenced.
So the fencing's not, is it the black vinyl coated?
Yeah, it's the fence that's there now, which is a vinyl coated fencing.
Is it in good condition?
Yes.
What areas of the building were going to be stained? I think I heard you mention that the masonry was going to have a stained color applied.
Right, it would be similar to this.
And what color is that?
This is redwood.
So all of this is redwood?
Right, and when you stain, the metal versus the CMU, it's not going to look exactly the same versus the brick. I mean, they'll all be in the same family together, but they're not going to be exactly the same color because they're 3 different materials.
And this is kind of the copper-colored vertical metal siding?
That's this, and then this is the CMU,
Oh, glad I
depending on which side we're looking at. So this is the metal panel on the new building, and then this is the existing CMU and brick that wraps around.
So it looks like there were some revisions made into the service area, back into here. Is that correct?
Not that I recall. This is the dining.
Right.
And this is the bistro dining and the middle school dining here.
Right. I didn't recall that being closed off like that with the cooling tower and
Yeah, that was always there.
That was always there.
Were there any other changes that were made to the media center other than the exterior facade being rectangular and the windows, the top of the windows being repeated throughout the...
No. I mean, it's essentially the same layout inside. It's a two-story dining space here, and the media center here, and the lower dining here. And then the dining continuing, all the way down to here.
Is the glass in the same plane as the facade material?
sorry, I'm not understanding, sorry, the question.
Is the, this is out in front of all the,
Yeah,
all the
that
glass.
this glass is, yeah, this is in front, the glass is on the same level. That's your question, right?
Which one was it, Allison?
A318.
A318. Oh, that helps.
The 350 is.
Okay.
Is this the bridge location? The elevated walkway right here? Sorry, what was the question? The elevated walkway is right here. Yes.
So is there fencing back here, or is the fencing out here?
Sorry, what was the question?
The fencing
The fencing's right here.
out in front, it's not back here. So it comes across, goes into the landscape bed, it goes, and then behind the bed, or?
No, it's kind of right here, right along this line.
So it just goes through the landscaping? Okay.
That fence is there now.
Oh, that's an existing fence?
Right.
Okay.
You had mentioned earlier that on the bridge, the structural is able to align with the stone columns.
The piers of the
Fence?
fence.
So now it's the fence
These-
running in between the piers, and the
Right.
supports for the bridge are actually coming down through those piers.
Well, they're in front of it, but they're aligned with it, so if you,
Oh, I see what you're,
You know,
so it appears correct. Everything's lined up.
if you're standing in the right place.
What's on the underside of the bridge? Is that all, is the surface of the bridge like a,
I mean, it's the same as the press box now. It's aluminum plank. So when you look up, you see the bottom of the aluminum plank and the structural steel.
is there any lighting mounted underneath any of that?
It's in the rail tubes. It's underneath the tubes of the rail, so it comes down from the rail.
Illuminates the walking surface?
And what's the lighting in the concession area?
The, we have an envelope. So this is a complementary fixture to the overall site lighting. It's a 15-foot pole with a minimal head.
We don't have the disco lights anymore?
Those are too expensive.
Okay.
Beneath that roof canopy,
Pardon?
beneath this,
Lighting underneath there, is that the question?
yeah.
I believe there's, I don't have that drawing with me, I believe there. downlights and that.
Okay.
So this is the site lighting that's already installed. You can see it's complementary to what's been installed already.
You can't even see the head because it's kind of like disappearing right in the foliage.
I like the lines of this.
Are we approving the landscaping as a part of this project right now?
Landscaping's already been approved.
Just making sure.
And Allison has copies of these.
What is this entry used for? I'm not sure what street it's off of. It's not right there.
Let's see, let's get my bearings here. Oh, that's the existing gym.
The existing gym.
Yeah.
Could you walk us through the plaza design between the concession area and the stadium, please?
So here on the north, there's the piers and black fencing, black picket fencing that's there already. This is the new concession stand here with the elevated platform. So then there landscape area here, here, and here, and here, soften that area. Well, this area is, excuse me, this is just a different pattern of concrete, you know, more tightly scored pattern. And then I have the kind of marked up what the trees are. So these are the sunburst honey locust. Little Henry's sweet spire here, sunburst honey locust, red rocket maples here, celebration maple, Arnold primrose, witch hazel over here. These are the celebration maples.
Thank you.
So there was some discussion about the medallions being relocated. Where did those get relocated to?
Medallions?
Or the reliefs, the stone by the theater?
The masks from the theater?
The mask.
So those are being installed inside the school.
Inside the school?
There's in the dining, the high school dining area, as well as the panther. There's a ceramic tile mosaic panther that was in the E building, which has been salvaged and saved, and that will also be going in the dining area. The school is now storing that.
So then what artwork was mentioned in the plaza?
Pardon?
What artwork was mentioned by staff in the plaza?
The district installed some canvas banners.
Canvas banners. Permanent or temporary, or temporary?
What are they attached to?
Bottom of the picture, bleacher frame.
Oh, I think I've seen them. They have the big E on them. Those are nice. They conceal the underside of the structure of the stadium. They bring a little bit of life to the plaza.
Do you want to approve them then?
What's the ground cover underneath the trees within the plaza areas?
Sort of underneath the trees.
Mm-hmm. You got like a, oh, that's liriope. I figured it out, it's okay. The L-I together looks like a U, so I was kind of wondering what it was. The finish on all the concrete, that's just a broom finish?
Room finish.
Okay, the elevator building, that's the next one that we didn't, could you kind of walk us through the,
I mean, I don't think there's really anything that's changed from last time we looked at that, but
we had some questions, I think, about stairwells leading from the plaza, going down to access lower level areas. Could you just refresh our memories as to what's going on with the elevator section?
so it goes down to the, it serves 4 levels. Right now, the track is inaccessible. So the elevator goes down to the track level and then comes up an additional 3 floors to the press box level. So it makes the north building fully accessible, which it isn't now, as well as providing ADA access to the press box, which the building department has been adamant that we need that for the press box. So it's really located to serve both functions, serve the press box and serve the lower level of the gym, the track, and all 3 floors. So it's located strategically to serve all those functions. And there was some concern about the height, which we reviewed last time, and the height just due to the overrun for the elevator and the hoist beam and everything. You know, we couldn't quite match the height of the existing building, had to poke up a little higher.
Thank you.
What are the colors indicated on the parking lot for?
The parking lot is done, and you didn't paint the letters different colors, did you? No, it's all white,
What's this, silver, red, white, green, gold, blue?
Initially, that was going to be, they were going to be assigned parking spots
Oh,
for our teachers.
oh,
The building administration decided that they didn't want to do that, so we didn't paint.
Yeah, if you go there, it's all white stripes now.
okay.
And that's all.
So that was just an indication of the pavement markings to identify reserved parking areas. And that you're not, I mean, I just wondered why the colors are on there.
Back to the elevator building, staff recommends that the brick match the existing.
Right,
Was the
that's-
material debated at all, or were other things, I don't recall you proposing anything different?
No, since it's, so integrally connected with the existing building,
Okay.
we think it should match.
Okay. Is it not clearly indicated?
I
as
just think,
such,
want to
or-
make sure, I don't think.
Okay, okay.
If it's rendered in two different colors on
Oh, okay, so
mean, it's
that's
just-
why, okay.
the one other change with the elevator building, you can see the difference between the site plan and then what's on the actual sheet. Is that the riser used to be aligned with the existing building, and now it's out further, so this is more of a landing than it was initially.
Yeah, there were some funky things going on with steps and how you were coming out the door, and it was the
Yes.
end of a hallway, I think.
Which looks like it's
Really-
not reflected on this plan, but using sheet A, 350, and 1/4A. This is what staff.
Yeah, we just gave a little more room there.
Remember that discussion. Oh, yeah, that's much better. Very nice.
It's quite a set of drawings. It's overwhelming. There's a lot of information there. Thanks for walking us through it. What's the finish on all the posts supporting the bridge?
They're powder coated like the rest, it just matched the stadium.
Stadium one, so it's all consistent.
Remind me, what is the revision we're seeing with that media center?
It was, we had a round corner before.
This was one of the options we had
Right.
seen.
I think when we discussed it, the board hadn't finalized their decision.
Okay.
Do you have any additional comments?
I have none. I'd
So-
be willing to hear a
So I would like to make a motion to grant approval of the additions and revisions to the new Euclid Middle and High School Plaza area and vocational building located on permanent parcel number 643-08-004, with the amendment that the recommendations that Allison described in the staff report be included with the project.
Do I hear a second for that motion?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Congratulations. You're done.
Okay, thanks very much. Thanks for your efforts over these past many months.
What? More additions? Oh, okay. Scott, would you please announce our next applicant?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, our first case under new business is case number 2018-ARB-18. James Condon, Chief Development Officer, Seafood Industrial Properties, on behalf of FC Euclid OH Landlord LLC, agent for Amazon, has submitted an application requesting design approval for an approximate
700-foot-long, 16-foot-tall concrete sound barrier along a portion of the southern property line of 1155 Babbitt Road, the U6 Industrial and Warehouse District. No motion requested.
Gentlemen, if you're going to sit there and speak, please make sure that the green light is on the microphone.
Not that one.
If one of you would be kind enough to please come up here so that we can interact with you a little bit better.
Absolutely.
And if you could move your easel and drawing a little bit closer.
Better?
Much better, thank you. Whenever you're ready.
Okay. I'm Chris Westbrook, W-E-S-T-B-R-O-K, with Langen Engineering. We're the site engineers for the Amazon Fulfillment Center, 1155 Babbitt Road. And we're here tonight to request approval of a sound barrier on the south side of the property, approximately 700 feet long and 16 feet high, consisting of concrete material. So, the representatives from the contractor are here as well, who can also speak to the materials and construction finishes. So, the wall is basically installed to be a good neighbor, based on the use and try to reduce the truck sounds below what the Euclid code allows for residential. So basically, we're in an industrial zone, but just to again be a good neighbor, we are reducing the sound that neighbors would observe. So.
Very good. Allison, do you have some comments concerning this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as the applicant stated, they're requesting design approval for an approximate 700-foot-long, 16-foot-tall concrete sound wall that is partially located along the southern property line of the property at parcel number 648-03008. The wall creates a separation between the Norfolk and Western Railway line to the south and the truck parking area on Amazon's property to the north. There is a zero lot zero lot line setback requirement for this type of structure on this type of industrial property, and so that's why there's no variance or anything needed for that location. The staff had requested information earlier this month of the applicant and received a satisfactory response regarding potential impacts on neighbors. As the applicant suggested, this project is designed to be a good neighbor, and staff wanted to make sure that sound refracted from the train going past the wall did not reverberate and echo back and have a negative impact on those residential neighbors to the south. The applicant did calculate this and found it to be an undetectable to the human ear, any additional sound that would come back from that reverberation. So after further review, the staff does recommend full approval for the design presented before you tonight. We do have one recommendation on one of the sheets in the plan. There is a indication of an optional post cap. That's shown on sheet 413, and we would recommend that that be part of the design.
Thank you.
You're welcome.